This is part 2 of the book Polar Regions by Melanie Waldron. This is a nonfiction book that's going to teach us facts about some of the coldest places on Earth. We are beginning with the section Antarctic Food Chains. Most food chains and food webs must start with plants because they trap energy from the sun. In the Antarctic, there is so little plant life on the land that it does not support many animals. Instead, the plant life is found in the Southern Ocean. Here, tiny floating plants called phytoplankton can capture the sun's light. These plants are eaten by tiny animals called zooplankton. Krill. Krill, a type of zooplankton, is a very important food source. Fish, birds, seals, and whales all eat krill. Seals and penguins eat fish, and orcas, killer whales, eat seals. This is a picture of the krill. These krill are eating tiny plants in the sea. Many animals eat krill. This is a picture of an Antarctic food web. This diagram shows some Antarctic food chains linked together to form a food web. The arrows show the movement of energy from one living thing to another. On the land, penguin chicks and eggs are at risk. Birds called polar skuas hunt them, looking around for any that are unguarded. Other birds feed on fish, shrimp, and squid from the sea. Wrong name. Crab-eater seals do not eat crabs. In fact, they eat krill, fish, and squid. People at the poles. There are no humans living on Antarctica apart from the scientists and tourists who stay for a while and then leave. It is simply too cold and harsh for humans to live there all the time. During the winter, it is impossible to get supplies, such as fresh food, to the Antarctic. Supplies have to be brought in before winter begins. Scientists in Antarctica live in modern research stations. They come to study things like climate and weather patterns. These are scientists here. Living in the Arctic. In the Arctic, there are no humans living around the North Pole because there is no land there. However, there are many different people living in the land around the edge of the Arctic Circle. Inuit people live in North America and Greenland. Nenets people live in Siberia. Sami people live in Northern Europe. It is impossible to grow much food in the Arctic. Instead, people travel across the frozen land and sea to hunt animals such as seal and walrus. This caption says, many Sami people use snowmobiles to help them herd their reindeer. You can see the snowmobile there. Old skills. In the past, people had to use animal furs and skins to keep them warm. They learned how to build shelters such as igloos to keep out of the bad weather. Now, most Arctic people live in modern houses in modern towns. Polar regions at risk. Very few people live in the Arctic, and only visitors stay in Antarctica. However, the polar regions are under threat from human activity. Habitats there are at risk because even very slight changes can have a big effect on the plants and animals living there. Global warming caused by burning coal and oil is one of the threats to the polar regions. As the planet warms up, more of the ice will melt and there will be less space for animals to live in. This caption says, global warming could be a disaster for polar bears. They use the ice to travel huge distances when they are hunting for food. Here you can see a polar bear on an ice, or a piece of ice. Summer vacation. The amazing polar regions attract tourists. However, even though many tourist companies are careful, Litter and waste can end up polluting the area. Also, some people are worried that tourists are getting too close to the wild animals. Ozone problems. Gases from spray cans and old refrigerators are also causing problems. These gases have destroyed some of the natural ozone gas in the air above the Antarctic. This lets more harmful rays from the sun through, killing some of the phytoplankton and zooplankton in the Southern Ocean. This means there is less food for the sea creatures. Resources at the poles. Mining for coal and minerals and drilling for oil are not allowed in the Antarctic. However, this is not the case in the Arctic. Oil drilling is a big problem there. Many areas have been damaged by the building of oil rigs and all the roads, pipelines, airports, and power stations that the oil rigs need. Some animals, such as caribou, can no longer migrate where they wish. They are stopped by the long oil pipelines that carry the oil. This caption says there are many oil rigs in the Arctic. There is always a risk of oil pollution. Floating fish factories. Enormous factory fishing ships can catch many tons of fish every day. The fish are processed and frozen on board, and some ships can stay at sea for weeks at a time. When people catch more fish from the sea, this means there is less food for other animals, and some fish species may die out. Largest mine. The Norilsk nickel mine in Russia is one of the largest mines in the Arctic. Minerals called nickel and palladium are mined there. The mining factories produce huge amounts of gas called sulfur dioxide. This gas destroys plants and creates a foggy haze in the air. The struggle to survive. With the threats of polar habitats increasing, plants and animals are being affected. Scientists have noticed that polar bears are losing weight. There are fewer polar bear cubs being born. More cubs are dying because their mothers can't feed them properly. Stop hunting. Seals were once hunted so much that they nearly became extinct. Rules on hunting have changed this, and now numbers are slowly increasing. In some places in the Arctic, oil pipes have been raised to allow caribou to pass underneath them. You can see the caribou here. Protecting polar life. There is better news for the Southern Ocean. The ozone hole that is affecting phytoplankton and zooplankton may shrink. This is because many countries have banned the harmful gases that destroy it. In time, the ocean's food supply may return to normal. Huge reserves have been created in the Arctic to protect the special habitat there. These include the Great Arctic Nature Reserve in northern Russia and the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. Polar regions in the future. Habitats in our polar regions are very special places where some amazing plants and animals live. However, these habitats are at risk from human activity. It is up to us to try to save these habitats by changing our activities. The good news is that there are already people working to save the polar regions. Scientists in Antarctica are working out how best to preserve the Antarctic. New nature reserves are creating safe habitats, and new technology can make oil drilling less damaging. You can help. You can do lots of things to help other polar regions, or to help the polar regions. Find out more about them. Read books and research websites. Join a conservation group that protects polar regions. Adopt an animal that lives in the polar regions. Be energy wise to help reduce global warming. Tell your friends and family so they can help too. Adopt a polar bear. The WWF, Worldwide Fund for Nature, has a plan where people can adopt polar bears. The money people give to do this is used to help protect polar bears and their habitats. It is important to protect the polar regions so that these amazing habitats can exist for many years to come. At the back, we have our glossary with all of the important words and places where we can find out more.